It's another build order tutorial, and this one is for all the Protoss out there who are struggling versus Zerg and are looking for some inspiration in just a pure macro game, something that you would see from any professional Protoss. And in this instance, we are going to be watching stats, so definitely one of the better Protosses to be learning macro from. It's going to be a standard Stargate fast third Nexus with a very simple push out later on, with a fake push out as well to kind of scare the Zerg just a little bit. He is facing Serral in this replay, so you know that if this works, well, then it must be pretty good. Put down that pylon on the low ground. Chrono once the pylon is done on your Nexus, and then get a gateway on the low ground, and use that probe to scout. Get a 17 Assimilator. Rally your next probe into the gas. Send a probe down to build a Nexus. Your scout should see a hatchery on that low ground. Continue rallying in probes to your gas. $20 Nexus. $20 Cybernetics Core. Get an Assimilator. And then a Pylon. Put 2 probes into that gas, and then rally in the third one from your Nexus. With your Cybernetics Core done, get an Adept and Chrono it. Get a Stargate. Re-rally your Nexus to the natural. Start Warpgate. Get a second Adept and Chrono both Nexus. Your second Adept should try and shade into the main base to see if they're building anything like more Lings, and then check the third. Build a Phoenix first out of the Stargate, Chrono it once, get a Pylon, grab a Gateway, once that Phoenix is done, start up an Oracle. Get 2 gases around 3:30. Your Adepts should all be back home, nothing fancy here. Chrono the Oracle. And get another Oracle. Saturate your natural gas geysers. You can see stats shaded his Adepts back home just to look for any Lings that are piling up. You can do that too, if you keep it in mind. If not, don't worry about it. Get a Robo. Warp-In 2 Adepts. Remember not to get supply blocked at this point. You can only hold your hand so long when it comes to building pylons. And you should have gotten the third Nexus at this point, even though Stats lost his probe. Get 2 more Adepts. And add on a couple of pylons in a way that SimCities your adepts in that third base, so they're protected by Ling surrounds. Warp in 2 sentries. Your oracles can come back home to help you against any Ling reinforcements, but they should be scouting for anything troublesome in the middle of the map. Get a Forge, a Twilight Council, and get an Observer from that Robo. Warp in another 2 sentries. If you are building probes consistently, you are oversaturating your natural, but that's okay. Start up an Immortal, Chrono it, and then just constant Immortal production after that. With your structures done, start a +1 attack and charge. Then grab 2 gateways and a Templar archives. Your third Nexus should be done or finishing, so transfer the probes that are oversaturating your natural, and continue to saturate your third. At this point, you can do a fake move out, but be cautious not to go on creep, and only trust this if you have sight on their army unless you are a good player and know typical Zerg timings. Get 2 gases at that third base, get another 2 gateways. You should still be pumping out those Immortals. Around now, do a double Hallucination Scout with your Sentries, trying to reach those back corners of the bases in the middle of the natural and third, where particularly spires usually get set down. Grab 2 more gateways. Get a Warp Prism at this point from the Robo and Chrono it. You should be fully saturated on the third base by now. Get a second Robo and start warping in High Templar to build Archons. You will be building a lot of units very quickly, so keep on point with your Pylon production. Around now, grab Storm. Chrono that +1, that's not quite done. And you are looking to move out. Send that army across the map. Make sure you have the Warp Prism. And that's going to be that. Will he actually work? Will stats win? I don't know. But hopefully you do with that push. If not, typical macro beyond that. Now for the build discussion. The strengths. The typical macro build that can be adjusted for future builds. So if you learn a new timing, if you want to do something like weirder, like a faster Storm, if you want to do a faster Nexus, like a 330 Nexus, so the fastest one you can get, this can still be adapted to that. You'll see a lot of things that have the similar bones to this build, but slightly different variations. So it's a really great opener to learn. A Stargate opener is safe against most things if you're good at scouting. The initial point of Protoss versus Zerg especially, it's all about the Probe Scout into the Adept Scout into the Stargate Scout. So Phoenix or Oracle, you saw him with the Phoenix doing a little bit of scouting. You'll want to make sure not to use any of these units aggressively and lose them, especially if you're uncomfortable with this build or just don't have the micro or what have you. But you can't just keep all your units back at home, because there are many things that Zerg can do to catch you by surprise. A Baneling Bust, a Ling Flood, a Roach Ravager attack, all things that are scoutable and holdable, but you actually need to be out on the map for it. This build gives an opportunity to work on micro to deal harassment, so instead of just building up your army and then moving out, like an Immortal Sentry all-in perhaps, which is a very good build to just learn, I guess, the build and just do it, right? This one's actually going to teach you a little more of the general Protoss just style of play that you should know and develop as you get further into StarCraft and up in the leagues, right? So micro with oracles, sometimes it's just not gonna work, but the more that you use the oracles, the more you get comfortable with them, the more that you also start including that Phoenix in to pick up the creep spreading queens. For First of all, you're going to feel like more of a boss. You're going to be like, I like stats. And then second of all, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable as Protoss, because one thing I've learned is that the initial stages of learning Protoss, especially versus Zerg, is feeling very in the dark until you become more comfortable with all these units. The weaknesses of this build. Doesn't provide strong pressure to the Zerg, especially if the Oracle control is poor. So you're trying to Oracle, you're trying to be stats or trap, and then they die, and you're in the dark and you don't have anything to harass with. That's not so good. And it is possible that the Zerg player either over defends, leaving you with nothing to do, or just defends really perfectly. Their queens were always in place and they didn't skimp on any spore crawlers. It's gonna happen. So with that in mind, perfect anti-Oracle defense is absolutely possible. So it doesn't provide much else if your oracles can't do anything, and again, if you lose your oracles, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Some tips and tricks. Use the first Adept to scout. Don't worry about doing damage. I know everyone wants to do something cool where they actually do damage with their Adepts. Don't bother. Keep them at home. It's going to make that third Nexus grab a lot easier as well to actually have 2, 4, 6 units back at home. In that mind as well, like you can go for the oracles out on the map, which you should occasionally, but you can also keep them back at home more often in preparation for any Ling swell that can attack your third Nexus. A Phoenix first can be sent through main lane to scout for early attacks. Your Adept might have missed, so with a Phoenix first here, that actually went and looked for Overlords, which it funnily enough missed, but it didn't really go through the main attack point on that map, and that's a little bit dangerous, but from what Stats saw with his Adept and Probe and all that, he basically was like, okay, it's not going to be that early of an attack. And then the Oracle can help out regardless anyways. That's also when his Adepts kind of went forward and looked for something that was hiding. So you can either send your Adepts forward and shade back home, or send Adepts forward in 2 different directions. But just keep in mind that the shade itself does not have much vision, and it's very possible you just miss like 30 Lings standing around. So the Phoenix might be better off, getting that first Overlord if it meets it immediately, but then just going through that main lane on any of our maps for the season and actually catching, roaches or Lings coming across the map. Focus on macro first. Build on Oracle micro as you get better. So again, send them out on the map, like to the main lanes of an attack on a map, learn what those are, and that'll kind of cover you. The Hallucinated Phoenix will cover you for any surprise tech swaps as well, and you don't have to worry about losing them as long as they get the scout. So just focus on macro first. It's generally a good idea in StarCraft to actually just macro first. Learn to be like Maru later. I hope this build does well in your ladder experiences, guys. It might be a little rough at first as you learn Protoss or learn more macro styles of play, but if you keep with it, if you refine the build, if you actually are hitting all the benchmarks that Stats laid out for us, then you're going to do great. You're going to be jumping up to Masters, and maybe even farther, right? So good luck, have fun on ladder, guys, and I'll see you next time for another build order tutorial.